Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. Good afternoon to one and all. I propose to open up today's Annual General Meeting of Shareholders. We are, myself and our senior managers, are very happy to welcome you to this emblematic building, which must be close to 40 years old, if I remember correctly. It's a building that we maintain as best we can. It's part of the group's heritage, I should say. Well, first of all, as chairman of the board of directors, I will be chairing this combined AGM. I'd like to thank the members of the board present here today, and if I may, I'd like to ask the two shareholders with the largest number of voting rights to act as tellers for today's AGM. This is Mr. Cyril Bouygues, present, and the FCP, this is a fund holding the shares purchased for the company savings scheme, represented today by Sylvie Bruno. Also present, thank you. I will now set up the bureau. I propose that Didier Casas act as secretary for today's AGM. I see that the shareholders present, represented, are having voted by correspondence. Between them, I have over 1/4 of shares with voting rights. The quorum required for the ordinary and extraordinary parts of the meeting has been reached. I also see that we have Luis Mursa and Sabine Libert, appointed by the Works Council to represent the employees at today's AGM. We have also Nicolas Feuty from Ernst & Young and Jean-Marc Deslandes from Forbis Mazars. They are our statutory auditors. There are also a number of people who are not shareholders, particularly journalists, analysts, and a justice are also present in the room. Now, before beginning our presentation, I propose to show you our new institutional video. Every year we are proud to share with you our main achievements and, in doing so, to pay tribute to the people in the group who really represent us throughout the world and who embody our values.
I'm serving on board as the second officer or second mate. I'm working for the Chipco maritime fleet of the Chipco Asphalt Company. We mainly focus transporting the bitumen. Maximum loading is 10,400 tons. The final use of this product mainly focus on the road creation as well as the airport runway. The life on the sea is just kind of the challenge. We live as a family, and we live as the band of brothers. Like my job, I love the adventure.
I've been working on this project now for nearly 8 years. This is definitely the biggest project I've ever worked on. Everything in its scale was off the charts. We've built the longest tunnels on HS2. and the UK's longest railway bridge. What I like about my job is the variety of challenges. There's almost an endless supply of problems that need solving, and a lot of them need creative solutions. And it feels brilliant when it clicks and the team overcomes the obstacles together. I feel we're contributing to society. When you're talking about a tunnel or a viaduct, it's a structure that's going to be there for hundreds of years, and millions of people are going to use it. I love it that we're leaving behind a legacy.
Ce projet MyCampus, ce sont des résidences communautaires à destination de jeunes actifs et d'étudiants. Ce sont des résidences non gérées, un concept que nous avons développé à l'agence. Le concept a été maintenant exporté un petit peu partout en France. On recrée la ville sur la ville, en l'embellissant également. On a cette utilité de répondre au mieux à l'ensemble des parties prenantes et puis surtout de loger les populations. C'est ce qui en fait notamment le métier le plus passionnant que je puisse connaître.
We're currently located in our Innovation Center, where a lot of our prefabrication and modularization happens. Our modular panels are what we use to construct our clean rooms. We support biotechnology and biopharma clients primarily, but we have engineering capabilities that allow us to also support nanotechnology and clean tech sectors. Being a part of Equans is a great opportunity for us. It allows us to be a part of a bigger system, a bigger company. We're building facilities that are allowing new technologies, life-changing medicines that are extending the lives of our loved ones, and I'm excited and thrilled to be a big part of that.
Sans savoir, mes parents ils m'ont conditionné. Tous les jours, on était devant la télé à 13h pour regarder Jean-Pierre Pernaut, à 20h le soir. C'était une manière pour mes parents de faire de moi une citoyenne éclairée. Bonsoir, soyez les bienvenus dans 24 heures, ravi de vous retrouver. J'ai le goût de l'information, j'ai cette curiosité, cette envie de comprendre. Et finalement, être journaliste, on est aux premières loges pour comprendre ce qui se passe. Si je tiens à ce point au groupe Bouygues, et au groupe évidemment TF1, c'est parce que ce groupe m'a accepté tel que j'étais.
Dans 2 mois, jour pour jour, nous serons appelés à élire nos maires.
On est de retour. Salut Barbie.
Salut Pierre.
S'il faut ne pas y aller, je vous obéirai.
Quoi?
Merci. Thank you. I now declare that the meeting is open, and I'm putting on the Bureau the documents made available to shareholders. The main documents are listed on the slide that you can see on the screen. On the screen, you can see the agenda for today's AGM, which is also included in the notice of meeting that you have received. First of all, the agenda for the ordinary part of the meeting, which includes 15 resolutions, followed by the agenda for the extraordinary part of the AGM, which comprises 6 resolutions. All the documents specified by the Commercial Code have been made available as required by law. I propose that you dispense us from reading the Board of Directors report, which is included in the Universal Registration document that has been made available to you. Now, with the help of Olivier Roussard, to my right, he is our CEO, Stéphane Stoll, to his right, who is Deputy CEO and Chief Financial Officer of our group. Edouard Bouygues is to my left. He is Deputy CEO in charge of development in the field of telecommunications, CSO and innovation. And Didier Casas, Secretary, General Secretary, or Company Secretary if you prefer. They're now going to present the situation of the Bouygues Group. And this presentation will be followed by the presentation of the reports by the statutory auditors. Olivier. Thank you, Martha. I'm going to begin with the presentation of the group. I'm going to begin with an overview of the group. We have 56.9 billion in sales, 200,000 employees, and a presence in 80 countries. Construction represents approximately 49% of our sales, and yield services represent, along with Equans, 33% approximately of our total sales. So our group is comprised of 4 business segments: the construction division, and energy and services, the telecoms and media, and within these 4 segments we have 6 different business lines. If we now take a closer look at our global footprint, thanks to the acquisition of Equans back in 2022, we have reinforced the international aspect of our group. Now 54% of the group's headcount work outside of France. Europe is still the fulcrum, and 50% of our sales are generated outside of France now. As for the shareholder list, we have reference shareholders in SCDM, controlled by Martin and Olivier Bouygues and their families, accounting for 28.3% of the total share capital, and the funds for the employees and former employees accounting for a total of 19.2%. Bouygues is one of the companies in the CAC 40 with the largest number of employee shareholders, which from our point of view is very important in terms of our group culture. Just a few words concerning this culture. We have a very strong culture. This is because of common values that are shared, clearly defined, and that are abided by. Our group has always been consistent with itself, and in fact, among the former values of the group, we used to mention respect, trust, creativity, and transmission. We already had values that were shared by the various business lines. Nonetheless, we needed to redefine them, I think, in order to establish a better foundation of values, particularly when we integrated Equans and its 70,000 employees. So in this new pedestal or foundation of values, we've maintained 2 values and added 2 more. We've added commitment and the pioneering spirit. This is something we did at head office before rolling it out to the executive committees of all our business lines, which were very involved around this project. We then conducted an in-house study with our survey of our employees in France and outside of France, but also an independent survey to ensure that these values were consistent with the group's image and identity. This is particularly in the choice of terms. The fact that we translate certain values for our employees outside of France. We had to be sure that these words actually had the same significance in English, for instance. Let me continue with our CSO ambition, which is a global ambition revolving around 3 main thrusts. First of all, the people at the heart of our group. We are a group, a services group. Our only great wealth is our people. They are our main asset. With this CSO organization, we are keen to contribute to the environmental and energy transitions, which involves fighting for climate change. It involves preserving resources and protecting biodiversity. And finally, we want to be a trusted partner for our stakeholders. For us, this means that we must abide by strict ethical rules. We must establish relationships based on trust with our suppliers and subcontractors, ensure human rights are respected, and be committed in company and to dialogue with our stakeholders. I propose now to move on to the figures for 2025. The group's performance was published a few weeks back. As you saw, our performance was very good, with the backlog giving us good visibility for the future. The group's sales figure was stable over a year. It was nonetheless impacted by negative currency translation effects, particularly in the second half of the year. And this came at a cost of 580 million euro. At constant exchange rates, the group's sales figure would have progressed by 1.3% over the year. The group's COPA is the current operating profit from activities. This was up substantially over a year, driven mostly by the construction businesses and Equans. It actually exceeded our initial expectations. The group share of net profit was up over a year despite the additional surcharge or burden of the additional taxation. Free cash flow before working capital requirements is at an all-time high and up for the third consecutive year. The variation in working capital requirements amounted to 941 million euro over the year. That is a positive aggregate of close to 3 billion euro over a 3-year period. And at the end of 2025, the group's net debt was well below the level at the end of 2024. I should point out that the net cash situation of Colas and Bouygues Construction were at all-time highs. Finally, I will come back to this a little bit later on. Equans' strategic plan called Perform is continuing to be well rolled out, continues to be profitable, and continues to generate cash. In this context, the board of directors is proposing the payment of a dividend at €2.10, which is up 5% on 2024 and up for the third consecutive year. Okay, the key figures. I've already mentioned the 59.6 billion in sales, which was stable over the year and up fractionally on a like-for-like basis. The COPA figure for 2025 was up 120 million euro over the year to reach 2,655 million euro. The group share of net profit was 1,138 million euro, up 80 million euro, despite the one-off contribution on the profits of large companies in France. The impact of this is a total of 69 million euro. Were it not for this contribution, and on a comparable basis with the previous year, the group share of net profit would have improved by 149 million euro. The impact on the net profit, the impact of the budget law and the law financing social welfare in France amounted to approximately 93 million euro, in line with our expectations. Finally, our net debt amounted to 4.2 billion euro at the end of December 25, which is a substantial improvement of almost 1.9 billion euro over a 12-month period. That's a very good performance and a good reflection of the efforts made by all our business lines throughout the year.
And now, some information about the women and men in our company, starting with, of course, health and safety, which is our number one priority. Regarding the occurrence of accidents, there's a slight degradation, and this is something that is counterintuitive. If you look at the company, that degradation is to do with the fact that Bouygues Telecom shops have been experiencing hold-ups and heists, and of course that usually entails some injuries. We had also 4 deadly accidents amongst our employees and 7 amongst our subcontractors. Of course, these are tragedies for the victims themselves and all our people, and I would like to express our full sympathy. We certainly expect our people to be able to go home safely every day. It is essential to reinforce this safety culture in each of our trades around the world. In 2026, part of the bonuses for corporate officers includes a health and safety element, precisely with a view to reduce the occurrence of accidents and such like. Diversity and inclusion is still a clear part of our performance strategy for commitment and cohesion, and this is part of our People First HR strategy. We have a clear ambition. We want to give equal opportunities to all talents. Gender balance is, of course, a special concern, but this is part of a more general picture where we want to take on board various aspects of our societal diversity in line with the realities on the ground for all our businesses, and so that's listed in non-financial criteria. We have several additional actions. We monitor the career paths, especially amongst women in operational lines. We have mixed international talents. We want to have better representation, access to responsibilities. We have consolidated indicators for that. We want to develop talents. We have dedicated programs to improve the chances of young leaders, especially women. And of course, we involve our own leaders. We have a governance policy, and that again is reflected in the compensation package. So we look at such criteria, gender balance, to reach our balances. And so by end 2026, we give ourselves a target of 30.5% of women in leading positions and 21.5% amongst managers. And that is part of a gradual trajectory in line with the group's own transformation. And we have a clear desire to have a demanding line of diversity, a structured and inclusive policy based on sustainable development and with objectives of lasting social justice. And so let's look at the various business lines.
Les valeurs qui nous relient guident chacun de nos gestes. Nos mains construisent bien plus que des infrastructures. Elles ouvrent la voie.
Très bien, je continue donc. All right then, and so let's look at the backlog of the construction division. It stands at 32 billion euros, which gives us plenty of visibility on future revenue on an equal scope basis. We have that the order book is up 1% over 1 year. The currency effects weighed more than 600 million euros. That backlog is stable in France, slightly up in Europe outside France, but outside Europe we have a slight decline. But of course the basis of comparison was significant because we had many big contracts in 2024. Let's look at the order book in closer detail at end 2025. The share of orders to be performed in the next 12 months was stable over the year. This is a rather reassuring. At Colas, the backlog stands at 13.7 billion euros, up 4% over the year, up 6% on a constant scope and currency basis, and that increase is driven by the rail business, whose backlog is up 17%. On the road business, that is down 3%, especially in France, as is usually the case in pre-election periods, especially for local and municipal elections. At Bouygues Construction, that order book stood at 17.5 billion euros, up down 4% over the year, down 2% on a constant scope and currency basis. It was up at Bâtiment France and Bâtiment International, down in public works. And that is, again, we had a high basis of comparison in 2024. We had large contracts that we got in 2024. At Bouygues Construction, portion of the business involves large projects That is not at all a regular feature over time. So between January and December, many things can happen. It's very difficult to make steady comparisons. 2024 was a prolific year because we had, of course, the T2D contract in Australia, upwards of 2 billion euros worth. That was signed in Q3. So these, when the contract is signed is when large amounts come in, and of course it sets up the comparison basis, and it structures the order book. At end December, you had Bouygues Immobilier's book standing at 8.8 billion, down 16% over the year, and 9% on the constant scope basis, but we dispose of our business in Poland, and this precisely because we disposed of that property business in Poland that the order book came down. Let's look at the financial results of the construction business. We start with revenue, which stood at 27.8 billion euros, up 1% over the year, 3% on a like-for-like basis. Colas's revenue figure was slightly up over the year, sustained by the rail business. That was up 13% over the year. The road business was stable over the year, with a slight growth in France, a slight decline outside France, especially in Europe, Middle East and Africa, and North America. Colas's revenue was impacted by a negative currency effect with 270 million euros over the year, and this is in line with the exchange rate of the US dollar, not just the US but also the Canadian dollar. On the like-for-like basis, sales would have been up 2% over the year. Bouygues Construction's sales were up 3%, driven by three divisions, Bâtiment International, Bâtiment France, and Public Works. This was also impacted with a negative currency effect to the tune of about 150 million euros over the year, and this is mostly to do with the Australian dollar, and to a lesser extent another dollar, that's the Hong Kong dollar, and of course there was still a portion generated by the US and Canadian dollars. Again, on the like-for-like basis, Bouygues Construction's sales figure would have been up 4%. Finally, Bouygues Immobilier's revenue was prima facie down 4% over the year, but it's slightly up on a like-for-like basis in view precisely of the disposals in July 2025. So what kind of COPA do you get out of that in the division? It stood at 982 million euros in 2025, so that's 155 million up over the year, again driven by the three divisions. At Colas, COPA stood at 586 million euros. Margin from activities was up 0.2 percentage points at 3.7%. Because COPA was 376 million euros. Margin up 0.3 percentage points at 3.5%. And at Bouygues Immobilier, COPA was 20 million euros, and there were some one-off items for a total amount of 24 million euros, in particular, of course, the disposal of businesses in Poland, but there was also the positive effects of cost-cutting plans, structural cost-cutting that started in 2024. Let's take a look at the beautiful video for Bouygues Construction. That is Bouygues Bâtiment, the international division, in particular by Maro, which is, of course, a subsidiary in Morocco.
C'était vraiment un challenge.
Le client nous a sollicité pour un accompagnement sur mesure dans la réalisation de cet ouvrage d'exception pour le Maroc.
Avoir un hôpital fonctionnel de 280 000 m² en 2 ans, c'est un engagement collectif pour le réussir et le livrer à bout. «
200 000 m³ de béton coulés en moins d'un an, plus de 7300 portes, 3700 locaux différents, environ 550 millions d'euros. Les chiffres parlent d'eux-mêmes.
La taille du projet est tellement exceptionnelle qu'il a fallu tout de suite imaginer une répartition par composante, en distinguant la composante enseignement, la tour et l'hôpital. Nous avons eu la confiance du client. Nous avons été écoutés, à juste titre, parce qu'il y avait l'expertise et le savoir-faire d'hôpitaux passés.
On se sent fort avec le logo Bouygues derrière. On se démarque parce qu'on ne fait pas que construire l'hôpital, on réfléchit à sa fonctionnalité.
Chaque équipement médical a des spécifications précises qu'il faut qu'on intègre au fur et à mesure de l'avancement.
Sur la partie fluides médicaux, on est à peu près à 70 km de tube. On a des locaux techniques partout.
Une de mes plus grandes fiertés restera la réussite collaborative du départ lancé, des phases d'early works, des études d'exécution et en parallèle de la conception et du chiffrage. Ça a été un véritable exploit.
Un des leviers importants, c'est la mobilisation anticipée des postes clés. On ne démarre pas par une petite foulée et on accélère, on démarre tout de suite en accélérant. Le fast track, c'est bien entendu un travail en rythme soutenu, avec un chantier qui tourne 7 jours sur 7, en double shift.
Sur un planning comme celui-là, il y a plus de 5000 tâches. Sans une méthode de travail, sans l'état d'esprit, on ne peut pas réussir un fast track, en tout cas pas comme celui-là.
Une expérience humaine incroyable. Il n'y a que les gens qui ont vécu ce chantier qui pourront vraiment mesurer mes propos.
Le plus important, et je crois que ce qui fait réellement la réussite du projet, c'est ça, c'est l'équipe.
Sur ce projet, il y a 60% à peu près de nouvelles recrues qui ont entre 25 et 28 ans. C'est leur première expérience professionnelle, donc on essaye de leur donner confiance. Puis surtout, on leur dit, si vous y arrivez ici, vous y arriverez partout ailleurs après.
Je me sens fière du travail qu'on a fait ensemble.
On va livrer un hôpital qui couvre 52 spécialités médicales avec les équipements de dernière génération qui va permettre d'ouvrir des niveaux de soins qu'on ne connaissait pas encore localement. Ça me rend extrêmement fier d'avoir posé une des pierres de l'édifice.
Moi, mon fils, quand il me demande pourquoi je vais à Rabat tous les jours, il me dit pourquoi faire un hôpital, je lui dis que c'est pour soigner les gens.
C'est un sentiment vraiment indescriptible de contribuer à ce virage historique dans le domaine de la santé.
C'était vraiment un challenge.
Ça a été un véritable exploit.
Une expérience humaine incroyable.
On a grandi sur ce projet.
I think you should know that the hospital was built in 24 months. There's another hospital beside it began a year beforehand. We completed ours last September. The one beside it still hasn't been completed. So to build a building like that in 2 years was bordering on impossible. But we talked about transmission as a form of our corporate culture. But there were a lot of young people who asked the companions to come and help to develop their expertise and complete it quicker. This is very important to get things right first time round. Let's move on to Equans. At the end of the year, Equans had an order backlog of 25.4 billion euro. That's stable on the year. At constant exchange rates, it was up 1%. By comparison with year-end 24. Over the year, it took in orders for 18.3 billion euro. That's stable over the year. That stability is a good reflection of how selective we were about contracts, particularly for large contracts. This is part of risk management. order intake on orders of less than 2 million, less than 5 million, I should say, was up over the year and represented 2/3 of the total order intake for the year. We talked about data centers, and we've talked about them several times in 2025. We saw a quarter-on-quarter increase in the order intake for data centers in North America. At the end, just at the very end of 2025, we saw a pickup in the data center activity in Europe. This is as a result of what the U.S. government decided the hyperscalers have been building in the U.S. rather than in Europe. The margin on orders has continued to improve gradually. Equans sales figure totaled 18.7 billion for the year, down slightly by 2% over the year. This is because of the wait-and-see policy in certain sectors of activity, in data centers in particular, and our proactive exiting from certain areas that were non-strategic and did not have sufficient strategic interest for Equans. And, of course, Forex, which had a negative impact of 160 million over the period, particularly because of the US and Canadian dollars. As for COPA rose substantially by 820 million euro, and the margin was up 0.8 of a percentage point to reach 4.4%. This is much better than the target we set ourselves at our capital market days in 2023 when we announced the roadmap for Equans. We've had to revise that upwards 3 times since that capital markets day. On this slide, we are going to talk to you about the Perform plan. This is the strategic plan we talked to you about in January and February 2023. It concerns a certain number of things, including sales, the margin, and cash. They are the 3 big ones. On this slide, you see the sales chart since 2022. Slightly different to what we expected at the start of the plan. This is 6% growth, or an average annual sales growth of 2% for the period between 23 and 25. Now, that may seem modest, but it's because we've been much more selective. We've been cherry-picking contracts to guarantee the lowest possible level of risk, the best possible COPA, and the fact that we've exited non-strategic activities, particularly in the UK, and a number of activities also that we have disposed of over the last 2 years. Together, they represented approximately 600 million euro. Overall, the sales for 2025 was in line with our initial expectations. 2025 was the year in which we materialized our first acquisitions, representing sales of approximately 200 million euro over a full year. Moving on to the margin. This is the profitability slide. Here we have the different areas where we set our targets. In the yellow, we told the markets that we could expect a margin of between 2.5 and 3%. As you can see, we're up at the top of that bracket at 2.9%. That was in 2023. In 2025, we said we'd be close to 4%. When we said close to 4%, this usually means that we will be bordering on the underside of 4%. Well, we actually achieved 4.4%, so we exceeded our guidance. That is because of what we presented at the Capital Markets Day: pricing effects, purchasing effects, what we call book killers, correcting a certain number of projects that were not going well. Before you can start earning money, you have to stop losing money. And of course, profit centers that we worked on with a view to boosting the margins, special emphasis on productivity. The third part of this Perform plan was cash, or generation of cash. The cash conversion rate, that's a COPA to cash flow. We achieved the high end of the bracket we told the markets about, and Treasury also improved substantially since 2022, even more so if we allow for the debt that we had at the time of closing the operation back in October 2022. So overall, since October 2022, we have generated some 3 billion euro in cash, which includes the payout by Equans of some 730 million euro to its shareholder, Bouygues, in other words, between 2023 and 2025. So what's the outlook for Equans? Well, Equans will continue to roll out its strategic plan, and for 2026, its objective is a stable sales figure by comparison to 2025 at constant exchange rates, a margin of 5%, which is a year ahead of the objectives we gave the Capital Markets Day back in 2023, and a conversion rate of working cash flow before working capital requirements of 80 to 100%. We'll be organizing a new Capital Markets Day to tell us what our new ambitions will be. This will be somewhere towards the end of the year, or possibly very start of next year. Let's now take a look at the institutional film for Equans.
Every day, we make gestures. Simple, straightforward ones. So ingrained that we no longer notice them. Gestures that matter. Behind each of them, there are other gestures. Precise, meticulous, essential. Gestures that connect, transform, and protect. Gestures that require rigor, expertise, and agility. Our know-how in electrical engineering contributes to continuously producing, storing, and transporting energy in a world that never stops. Here, we electrify, connect, to create greener mobility, to make daily life more seamless and more sustainable. Here, too, our HVAC engineering interventions regulate, heat or cool all types of buildings. Elsewhere, in high-tech factories, our engineers and technicians ensure better air quality and a healthy environment to improve performance. There are also gestures that we optimize with robotics to increase precision, efficiency, and safety. And everywhere, our digital solutions and data expertise analyze flows and ensure efficiency in the most complex infrastructures. All these gestures, they are ours. For 200 years, they have been bearing witness to our mission to serve cities, businesses, and communities. Now, they reflect our commitment to the transitions of our time: energy, digital, and industrial. They are a collective lever for a more resilient and low-carbon world. For a future where everything is possible. The power to act is in our hands. Equans, empowering transitions.
I propose to move on to Bouygues Telecom, which achieved its targets for 2025 with good sales performance in fixed lines, in volume and value, and of course good growth dynamics in fiber, because Bouygues Telecom has gained over 500,000 new clients, including 139 million in the last quarter. These are clients with fiber to the home now total 4.7 million and represent 86% of the total fixed product. In overall, the fixed lines clients are 5.4 million in total, up 267 million for the year, including 83 million in the last quarter. The fixed line ABPU was up to 33.8 euros, up 40 cents over a year. In mobile, we performed well in a highly competitive environment. At the end of December, Bouygues Telecom had 18.6 million mobile subscribers, not including mobile to mobile, M2M. That's an increase of 216,000 clients over the year, including 86,000 in the last quarter. This is a good reflection of the continued benefits of big in convergence. This combines with convergence to satisfy clients and has a very positive impact on churn. ABPU, including for mobile, including France Telecom clients, was 17.3 euros per client per month, stable by comparison with the third and second quarter of 2025, and down over the first. This is because of the dilutive effect of La Poste Telecom, but also the pressure on prices with the acquisition of new clients in digital subscriptions. Very active market. On the next slide, you'll see that sales billed to customers in 2025 was up 4% over the year. For La Poste Telecom, that figure was almost stable over the year, but the total sales was up 4% per annum. This is comprised mainly of terminals, accessories that were up 5% over the year. EBITDA after leases totaled 2.042 billion, was stable over the year, and includes the limited contribution from La Poste Telecom. This stability of EBITDA after leases is because of the increase to sales billed, but also the continued efforts to contain costs, the increased energy costs. Bouygues Telecom no longer has the very positive hedging operations it set up in 2020 and 2021. They ended their effects in 2024. COPA was down. That was expected. It was down to 674 million due to the increase in depreciation and amortization. This is in line with the capital expenditure trajectory in the past, and of course the increase in energy costs. Gross investments over the year reached 1.48 billion in 2025. This was operating capex. Disposals by Bouygues over the year totaled 393 million euro. There's a sharp increase over 24, mainly due to disposal of assets held by Infracos for a total of 322 million euro. Infracos is a company that was owned 50% by SFO, 50% by Bouygues Telecom. This was for radio sites that we had in common with the SFO. SFO and Bouygues Telecom discussed this together this was concluded in the end of December 2025. So what about the outlook for Bouygues Telecom in 2026? Well, for 2026, we are targeting a sales bill to clients and EBITDA after leases close to 2025. As announced at the end of 2024, they will be up slightly by comparison with 2023, not including La Poste Telecom. Gross operating income should reach 1.3 million, excluding frequencies, confirming the decline after the peak capex observed in the last 5 years. Finally, free cash flow after working capital requirements will total approximately 600 million. Free cash flow before capital requirements, including for Telecom, including the additional taxation charge, will be in the region of 500 million euro. I'd like you to make a note of the fact that Bouygues Telecom in 2026 will not exercise its call for the 51% of the joint venture called SDAIF. This is jointly owned 49% by Bouygues Telecom, 51% by Vauban Infrastructure Partners. This is in an investment in the rollout of fiber in medium density zones. First of all, I should say that this year is an important stage for Bouygues Telecom because we are celebrating our 30th anniversary. It's also a special year with all the major strategic challenges we have with the SFO case. Last week, on 17th of April, the group announced in a press release that Bouygues Telecom, Iliad and Orange were conducting exclusive negotiations with Altice France with a view to the acquisition of SFO. The offer being tabled will be for the vast majority of the SFO's assets, but will exclude investments in Intelsia, Ultra Edge, XP Fiber, which is optical fibers, and Altice Technical Services. These are subcontracted services developed by SFO. Also excluded are the mobile operations overseas. This bid will concern a total of assets for 20.35 billion in enterprise value. These are the assets under consideration. Altice France has given us an exclusivity up until the 15th of May 2026. 15th of May 2026 in order to finalize the terms of reference and the documents for this transaction. This is in a mature market. This industry operation will enable us to sustainably reinforce our ability to invest in high throughput networks in cybersecurity and AI would enable us to consolidate our control of strategic infrastructure and digital sovereignty, and would preserve a competitive system that would benefit consumers. A lot of stages to go through, beginning with this agreement to be signed with the seller, and then a period of analysis by the antitrust authorities, which we expect will take several months. Let's now move on to the results of TF1, published on the 12th of February. You may have attended the AGM last week. But in 2025, Group TF1 confirmed its leadership. The share of audience among women under 50 in charge of purchasing decisions was 34.9%. For the age group 25-49, it was 30.9%. And in digital, which is really the product of the future, TF1 Plus is the main free streaming platform with 38 million monthly streamers on average in 2025, up from 33 in 2024. Sales figure took 2.3 billion, down 1% over a year on a like-for-like basis. In an advertising market that has been deteriorated, particularly towards the end of the year. The media revenue figure was 1.9 billion, down 4% over the year. It includes advertising revenue, which is down 4%. The advertising market in linear, which is the former type of television, has been impacted by all the various macroeconomic uncertainties between instability in France, war elsewhere in the world. But in digital, TF1 Plus has continued to post very good performance, with the advertising revenue up 36% over a year, which confirms just how attractive this platform is for advertisers. The sales of Studio TF1 reached 376 million euro, up 9% a year, and includes a contribution of 44 million euro from JPG, which is a business that was acquired in the USA. Its business was mainly towards the end of the year. Excluding JPG, Studio TF1's figure was up 6% over the year. TF1's COPA was down to 252 million euro. It includes the cost of programs for 967 million euro. Remember that COPA in 2025 included capital gains from sales of totaling 38 million euro. In 2024, this included a capital gain of 27 million. The operating margin was at 11%, in line with the objective revised, which we said would be in the region of 10.5% to 11.5%. I'm going to round this off with the outlook for 2026 for TF1. Because of its strategy and its innovative digital proposals, also its strong financial situation, the objectives are as follows. Sustained double-digit growth in digital in 2026, a dividend policy that will be on the up in the next few years, and of course, practices are changing very rapidly. Political and macroeconomic environments are unstable. Given this fact, I think that the advertising market in linear will remain under pressure in 2026. We are gradually transitioning towards digital, and in 2026 we expect the margin it's the operating margin in the mid to high single digits, depending on how the linear market develops. Translation between 5 and 10%. I propose to show you a short video on TF1 Plus.
Ce soir, c'est là que tout va commencer. Bienvenue Aurélien.
Oh Julia, quel plaisir de vous revoir. Bonjour Madame Ackerman.
Les chambres sont prêtes, monsieur le procureur, votre clé. Adrien Jacquard, 45 ans. Il a été tué entre minuit et 1h du matin. Personne ne quitte l'hôtel sans mon accord.
Vous n'étiez pas très discrète avec Adrien Jacquard. Adrien, tu t'en fichais. Tu l'as pris, tu l'as jeté, tu t'es comporté comme une garde. Je vous ai vu sortir de la chambre d'Adrien Jacquard le jour du meurtre. En quoi ça vous concerne?
Un meurtre, c'est d'abord un mobile.
Faut que je récupère le dossier de l'affaire au commissariat. Comme ça, j'aurai de quoi mener ma propre enquête. Mais quelle enquête? Ne t'approche plus, jamais de ma famille.
Comment t'as fait pour me mentir toutes ces années?
Il faut qu'on parle de ce qui s'est passé hier soir.
Merci, Olivier. Thank you, Olivier. Thank you. To tell us about our environmental strategy, I'm now giving the floor to Edouard Bouygues. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear shareholders. 2025 was the year in which the group formalized its strategy in order to give our stakeholders greater visibility. First of all, we articulated this strategy around two big commitments. First of all, we have undertaken to reduce our impact on the environment. This reduction means that we will have to reduce our impact in three areas. First of all, greenhouse gases. We are reducing the amount of greenhouse gases we emit. Secondly, resources. We are increasingly focusing on the circular economy, recycling, reusing, and so on. And finally, we are reducing pressure on ecosystems. The second commitment is that we want to accompany or support the transition of our territories by developing activities in favor of sustainability, by setting up offers and solutions that enable our clients to be more adaptable and more resilient, and finally, by bringing our shareholders and bring everybody on board with greater involvement in the environmental and energy transitions. Now, this strategy has been set up with all our business lines, and we are emphasizing the particularities of each of our business lines, but the first indicators have already been drawn up. You see what we've called them. Some of these indicators are measured in a very accurate way. For instance, we have given you the percentage of carbon intensity that's been reduced in concrete. This is something we have to clarify. We haven't yet been able to calculate that figure accurately, but we hope to be able to give you that by the end of 2026. We will gradually be defining targets for a number of indicators in order to measure and manage our commitments. Good news, very similar to what I said to you last year. Good news is that greenhouse gas emissions have been reduced in 2024 and again in 2025, and are now slightly below 20 million tons of CO2 equivalent in 2025. This has been largely thanks to three of our businesses, maybe the biggest emitters, unsurprisingly, Colas, Bouygues Construction, and Equans. Colas have been buying fewer and fewer less and less carbon content in our products, and of course, Bouygues Construction have been using products that emit less and less gas. This has enabled us to reduce our carbon emissions overall. But Equans has been heading in the wrong direction. This is because of a change in the scope of what we measure. It's not a counter-performance on the part of Equans. I think it's just that we are measuring it a little bit better. Thank you. Thank you, Edouard. I propose that we now hear from the Ethics, CSO, and Patronage Committees, presented by its President, Clara Guimard.
Mesdames, Messieurs les actionnaires, le comité de l'éthique de la RSE et du mécénat est composé de Nathalie Bellon-Zabo, administratrice indépendante, Raphaël Desfessel, administratrice représentant les salariés actionnaires, et moi-même, administratrice indépendante et présidente du comité. Le comité contribue à la définition des règles de conduite et des principes d'action du groupe en matière d'éthique et de conformité, et de veiller à leur respect. Il examine les orientations stratégiques du groupe en matière de responsabilité environnementale, sociale et sociétale, en particulier en matière climatique. Il examine aussi les plans d'action et les résultats obtenus. En charge des questions de durabilité, il suit la mise en œuvre des obligations de reporting issues de la directive CSRD et formule des recommandations au conseil d'administration sur l'état de durabilité et le plan de vigilance. Enfin, le comité donne un avis sur les actions de mécénat et de sponsoring de Bouygues SA. Au cours de l'année 2025, le comité s'est réuni à 6 reprises. La feuille de route éthique et conformité du groupe a été soumise au comité début 2025. Il a suivi la mise à jour de la charte RSE fournisseurs et sous-traitants, le suivi des audits de conformité réalisés dans le groupe par Bouygues SA et la refonte du séminaire éthique. Il en a suivi le déploiement au cours de l'année. Afin d'encourager et de faciliter les signalements des manquements à l'éthique, les campagnes de communication visant à faire connaître le dispositif de recueil de ces signalements se sont poursuivies dans chacun des métiers. Un suivi trimestriel du nombre et des différentes typologies de signalements enregistrés au sein du groupe est fait par le comité. Le nombre de signalements enregistrés a continué d'augmenter. Ainsi, en 2025, 691 signalements ont été reçus, contre 528 en 2024 et 430 en 2023. Signe que la diffusion du dispositif dans l'ensemble des métiers continue de progresser. Plus généralement, le comité est tenu informé des dossiers spécifiques en matière d'éthique et exprime des recommandations pour améliorer la sensibilité et la conduite éthique des collaborateurs. Début 2025, le comité a examiné la stratégie RSE et climat du groupe et les perspectives pour l'année à venir. Il a suivi les indicateurs de performance extra-financière. Dans ce cadre, il a été informé du plan d'action mis en place à la suite des évaluations du groupe réalisées par les agences de notation extra-financière. Dans le cadre des obligations de reporting de durabilité issues de la réglementation CSRD, pour la deuxième année consécutive, le comité de l'éthique, de la RSE et du mécénat a revu la matrice de double matérialité et a examiné le projet d'état de durabilité de Bouygues en lien avec le comité d'audit, en vue de formuler ses recommandations au Conseil. En coordination avec le comité de la gouvernance, de la sélection et des rémunérations, le comité s'est également prononcé sur la définition ex ante ainsi que sur les niveaux d'atteinte ex post des critères éthiques et RSE de la rémunération variable annuelle et de long terme des mandataires sociaux et exécutifs de Bouygues SA. Le comité d'éthique a pu s'assurer que les critères retenus sont précis et quantifiables, tels que le taux de suivi des formations éthiques, le taux de féminisation, le nombre d'accidents du travail graves, conformité, actions de réduction des émissions de gaz à effet de serre. Ils font l'objet, pour la plupart, d'un audit externe. Enfin, le plan de vigilance de Bouygues SA comporte les mesures destinées à identifier les risques et à prévenir les atteintes graves envers les droits humains et les libertés fondamentales, la santé, sécurité et l'environnement. Il couvre les activités du groupe et de ses sous-traitants et fournisseurs. Le comité a notamment examiné les actions prises en 2025 pour renforcer l'identification des risques au sein de la cartographie faisant partie du plan de vigilance et a formulé une recommandation au Conseil en vue de son adoption. La politique de mécénat de Bouygues SA intervient en complément de l'action de la Fondation Francis Bouygues. Chaque projet de mécénat et de sponsoring de Bouygues SA fait l'objet, avant d'être soumis au comité, d'une vérification de l'absence de conflit d'intérêts et du niveau de probité du bénéficiaire. En 2025, le montant global engagé par Bouygues SA s'est élevé à 1,6 million d'euros. Le mécénat a représenté 94% des dépenses et le sponsoring 6%. Le comité participe à la réflexion initiée par la société visant à repositionner sa politique de mécénat en vue d'en renforcer l'impact et la cohérence et d'en faire un levier de fierté et d'engagement interne. Dans ce cadre, une clarification des axes d'intervention a été effectuée. Ainsi, la politique se déploie désormais autour de 5 axes, comme il est indiqué à l'écran. Égalité des chances en direction des jeunes, habitat et inclusion, notamment dans la lutte contre le mal logement, santé, recherche et innovation, en ciblant la recherche de pointe, environnement et biodiversité, la femme et l'enfant pour lutter contre l'exclusion sociale et l'isolement lié à la précarité. Je vous remercie de votre attention.
Je remercie Clara Guémard pour sa présentation et je vais maintenant now give the floor to Stefan Stoll, who will present the financial statements for 2025. Stefan.
Olivier. Good afternoon, everyone. So Olivier mentioned the revenue figures business line by business line. We have a few more details on the income statement, and for the year 2025, we had about 100 million euros in PPA depreciation. That is similar to what we had in 2024. The 100 million euros include 46 related to Equans and 35 million from Bouygues Telecom. The non-current items, non-representative, stood at 224 million euros for the year. This is very much in line with that of 2024. Of course, that non-current result for 2025, of course, is different from that of 2024. This year, in one-off items, you have the following items: the incentive plans for Equans Top Management. In 2025, it was 100 million euros. You had provisions at Bouygues Construction, and that was in line with the new fire regulation in the UK. And that's for our construction business in the UK. That was worth 74 million euros this year. Expenses related to disputes and litigation that could ask worth 42 million euros. And the net balance of income and non-current income and expenditure at Bouygues Telecom, so 9 million euros. You have capital gains for the disposals of site data centers and assets held in France by Infracos. And then you had expenses related to some legal disputes. And in the financial result, and that includes the net cost of financial debt, the interest on leasing obligations and other income and expenditure, minus 410 million euros, and that amount is close to that of 2024, which stood at minus 392 million euros. And then we have taxes worth 574 million euros that did not include the one-off additional tax for large companies. That was 81 million euros. So altogether, it should be 655 million euros. That was our tax bill for the year. And so therefore, the net profit group share stood at 1.138 million euros, up 80 million euros in spite of that surcharge, that tax surcharge. Altogether, of course, plus the extra budget for the welfare system in France, that stood at, the effect of that was about 93 million euros, and that was again in line with our initial estimates. Now, as you can see on this slide, the net financial debt at end 2025 stood at 4.2 billion euros compared with 6.1 billion euros at end 2024. So that's a very significant improvement to the tune of about 1.9 billion euros from one year to the next. In 2025, there were rather few acquisitions. The total amount was about 76. The net balance of acquisitions and disposals was minus 76 million euros. Of course, let me remind you that the acquisition of Colas by Sudcote is still being investigated by the American competition authorities. If you look at the debt level, you had variations in capitals, 251 million euros. That was stock options, the exercise of stock options, dividends, 865 million euros, including 755 million euros to Bouygues shareholders, and then the balance was minority shareholders of TF1 and Bouygues Telecom. And then the others item, that was 2.6 billion euros. We'll get details on that now. So you start with the net cash flow position after leasing obligations stood at 3.7 billion euros, so that's very much in line with 2024. Capital expenditure, not including frequencies, stood at 1.9 billion euros. It's 400 million less than 2024. There were some asset disposals at Bouygues Telecom worth 393 million euros. Free cash flow before WCR stood at 1.8 billion euros, and that's a record level, and that's thanks to all the efforts of all the business lines throughout the year. So you had operations conducted by Bouygues Telecom in 2025 worth 222 million euros, and that included the disposal of assets held by Infracos. If you look at working capital requirements, the change was 941 million euros compared to last year. That's a significant amount for the third year running. We're looking at about 3 billion euros accumulated over 3 years. That very positive development has been somewhat dampened this year by currency effect worth about 200 million euros. Now, on the next slide, we look at the net financial debt since 2022. If you look at, you have to remember that the net financial position stood at 7.5 billion euros at end 2022, after the acquisitions of Equans, of course. Now we have a stringent financial discipline, and that led to a significant deleveraging over the past 3 years, in spite of additional acquisitions that took place in 2023 and 2024, in particular, of course, the Colas operation in 2023, but also the acquisition of La Poste Telecom, worth about 1 billion euros, and that was in 2024. So the net financial debt came down by about 3.3 billion euros, and so our financial position is very sound indeed. The outlook is promising, and so we were able to bring our dividend up, and as you know, we have our dividend policy is a long-term policy, and that is why we're suggesting a new increase in the dividend for the third year running. We take it now from 2 to 2.10 euros per share. If the resolution is adopted, then it means the payout will be up 17%, will have been up 17% over 3 years. A few words about our financial structure. The net financial debt is significantly down, and so therefore the debt ratio stood at 28%, and that was up 14 percentage points over 1 year. We also had a confirmation from the rating agencies. We have sound ratings. At Standard & Poor's, our rating stands at A- stable outlook, and at Moody's A3 stable outlook. And the group's cash position stands at 17.6 billion euros at end December. This is extremely high, but of course you have 6.4 billion euros in actual cash, and 11 euros in medium and long-term unused credit lines, and then facilities. And then, as you can see on the chart at the bottom left, right corner, the distribution of debt schedule is extremely even. If you look at Bouygues SA, now the holding company, the equities were up 434 million euros. Now, why is that? Well, you had, of course, the profits for the year, 971 million euros, and the exercise of stock options to the tune of 258 million euros. So that's what you have on one hand. And then conversely, you had dividends paid out in 2024 worth 754 million euros, and a cancellation of treasury shares worth 48 million euros. And so the net debt position down 385 million euros was, of course, boosted by the exercise of stock options and other buying back of treasury shares. At the end of 2025, the net profit for Bouygues SA stood at 971 million euros, up 63 million euros compared to last year. This is because there was a higher financial result, 109 million euros, because of the increased dividends from various business lines, in particular Bouygues Construction and Equans. Then there were higher operating losses, 22 million euros, and that was because of the higher share price and the taxes on free shares given to employees. And then there were other there was smaller profits and taxes worth 24 million euros. That's because there were fewer losses in integrated companies. Thank you for your attention. Sorry about the delay.
Merci Stéphane. Je vous propose maintenant d'entendre.
Thank you, Stéphane. And now let's listen to the report of the Audit Committee. We have the Chair, Benoît Maes, who will give you his report.
Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs les actionnaires. Je vais vous présenter le compte-rendu des activités du comité d'audit pour l'exercice 2025. Ce comité est composé de mesdames Pascaline de Drosy, Clara Guémard, Sylvie Bruno et moi-même. Madame Sylvie Bruno, qui représente les salariés actionnaires, a été nommée lors de votre dernière Assemblée générale annuelle et succède à Madame Michèle Villain, que le comité a remercié chaleureusement pour sa participation à ces travaux. Je voudrais tout d'abord rappeler que le rôle principal du comité d'audit est de s'assurer de la qualité et de la sincérité de l'information comptable publiée par la société et, en particulier, du respect des normes comptables en vigueur, de la correcte traduction dans les comptes de la réalité économique des opérations, du niveau de prudence des estimations de la société sur les actifs et passifs du bilan. Pour cela, le comité vérifie que pour réaliser leur contrôle dans toute indépendance, les commissaires aux comptes disposent des moyens suffisants. Le rôle du comité d'audit est aussi de vérifier l'existence et le bon fonctionnement des grands dispositifs de maîtrise des risques du groupe. Enfin, en matière de communication financière, le comité d'audit examine, avant la présentation au conseil d'administration, les projets de communiqué trimestriels sur les résultats financiers et fait part de ses observations. Le comité d'audit revoit également, conjointement avec le comité de l'éthique de la RSE et du mécénat, le processus d'élaboration de l'état de durabilité publié par le groupe. J'en viens maintenant à l'activité du comité d'audit au titre de l'exercice 2025. Le comité s'est réuni à 6 reprises avec un taux de présence de ses membres de 100%. 4 séances ont été consacrées aux arrêtés trimestriels et au contrôle et à l'audit interne. Une séance spécifique a été consacrée, comme chaque année, à l'analyse des risques majeurs et à l'évolution des contentieux significatifs du groupe. Le comité a enfin consacré une réunion additionnelle à l'examen de l'avancement du plan d'action mis en œuvre par le groupe en matière de cybersécurité. En outre, et en complément de ces réunions du seul comité d'audit, une réunion conjointe s'est tenue avec le comité de l'éthique de la RSE et du mécénat afin d'examiner, en liaison avec les auditeurs de durabilité, le projet de rapport de durabilité établi par le groupe en application de la directive CSRD. Pour toutes ces réunions, les documents et dossiers étudiés sont mis à disposition des membres via une plateforme dématérialisée, le plus souvent au moins 2 jours avant. Certains sujets ont fait en 2025 l'objet d'une attention particulière. J'ai déjà mentionné le rapport de durabilité produit pour la première fois en 2025 et la cybersécurité qui reste dans le contexte actuel une préoccupation permanente. Je citerai en outre la mise à jour de la politique fiscale du groupe, les impacts de la loi de finances sur les comptes du groupe, notamment en lien avec la contribution exceptionnelle sur les bénéfices des grandes entreprises, et une réflexion sur un scénario de gestion de crise lié à un blackout électrique pour faire écho à l'incident rencontré l'an dernier par l'Espagne et permettant d'évoquer les dispositifs de continuité que le groupe pourrait déployer dans un tel cas de figure. Comme à chaque clôture annuelle, les principales participations ont fait l'objet d'un test de valeur pour vérifier que leur valeur comptable au bilan est bien justifiée. Le comité d'audit a par ailleurs examiné tout au long de l'exercice des opérations plus courantes, notamment certains grands contrats de construction qui peuvent avoir un impact significatif, positif ou négatif, sur les comptes, afin de nous assurer que les évolutions des chantiers concernés sont traitées dans les comptes de la période avec toute la prudence requise. Dans ce cadre, les explications nécessaires sont apportées au comité, tant par les équipes financières du groupe que par les commissaires aux comptes. S'agissant plus globalement de la relation du comité avec les commissaires aux comptes, je voudrais souligner plusieurs points. Les commissaires aux comptes ont rendu compte trimestriellement de leurs travaux. En particulier, lors de la séance du comité d'audit de mars relative aux comptes annuels, les commissaires aux comptes ont présenté les conclusions de leurs travaux et leurs opinions issues de leur rapport complémentaire au comité d'audit sur les sujets majeurs relatifs aux comptes. Ils ont répondu aux questions des membres du comité sur les sujets d'arrêté comptable et ont présenté la synthèse de leur revue du contrôle interne du groupe. Les membres du comité se sont par ailleurs entretenus avec les commissaires aux comptes sans la présence des représentants de Bouygues SA pour évoquer très librement les conditions d'exercice de leur mission, moyens, indépendance, relations avec les équipes comptables et financières. Les budgets de commissariat aux comptes et les services autres que la certification des comptes ont été examinés et approuvés par le comité. J'évoquerai pour terminer la gestion des risques et le contrôle interne. Lors de sa première séance, le 15 janvier 2025, le comité a examiné les risques majeurs du groupe. Le recensement de ces risques résulte d'un processus impliquant tous les dirigeants opérationnels du groupe afin d'aboutir à une bonne vision des grands risques opérationnels et financiers du groupe et des dispositifs mis en place pour gérer au mieux ces risques. Un suivi des plans d'action bâtis pour mettre en œuvre ces dispositifs de traitement des risques a été présenté lors du comité qui s'est tenu en septembre 2025. Le comité a eu enfin, tout au long de l'exercice, des présentations sur différents thèmes. L'audit interne, tout d'abord, avec la présentation des conclusions des missions d'audit interne, le bilan des suivis d'audit et le programme d'audit interne pour l'année suivante. La synthèse de la campagne d'auto-évaluation du contrôle interne, la présentation du reporting sur les fraudes et le programme d'assurance du groupe. En conclusion, avec les 3 autres membres du comité d'audit, nous avons pu pleinement assurer nos missions en 2025, éclairer le conseil d'administration sur les grandes options comptables et vous assurer que la société a mis en place les moyens nécessaires à une bonne maîtrise de ses principaux risques. Je vous remercie de votre attention.
Je remercie un peu. I think we can applaud because these committees have a considerable workload and I think cast light for the shareholders on how the company is run, which I think is a very good thing. So, dear Mr. Benoit Mas, thank you for your report. I'm now going to give the floor to our statutory auditors for the various reports. Gentlemen, you have the floor. Thank you, Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, dear shareholders. The College of Statutory Auditors has issued several reports as part of its mission. First of all, the certification of sustainability and the control of the publication of information under the taxonomy rule. Then, under its ordinary general meeting, we have a report on the parent company and consolidated accounts, the resolutions 1 and 2. Then we have a special report on what we call related party agreements. This will be covered by resolution 4. Then under the extraordinary general meeting, we have drawn up reports on different transactions that you are asked to express an opinion on, resolutions 16 to 20, which we will go into in greater detail. These are all available in the annual report, so I propose not to read them in extenso, but to report on them in the form of summaries. First of all, the sustainability report, which is on page 309 of the Universal Reference Document, the French version, that's page 309. Firstly, this concerns compliance with ESRS, what Bouygues has done in publishing its information. It's called the double materiality analysis. We have not identified any errors, omissions, or substantial inconsistencies based on the checks that we carried out. Secondly, is compliance of information on sustainability with ESRS standards. Here again, we haven't identified any substantial errors, omissions, or inconsistencies based on our verifications. Our report comprises 3 comments. The first of these concerns the continued or ongoing analyses conducted by the group aimed at identifying and quantifying certain levers in the decarbonizing of your transition in order to achieve or reach the objectives approved by STBI. The second concerns the analysis carried out by the group, taking into account in categories 311, that's the use of products sold, concerning the carbon footprint of certain equipment installed and not manufactured. And thirdly, the work being conducted to extend the scope of certain social indicators and environmental data regarding waste. As for compliance with the demands to publish under the what's so-called green taxonomy, we haven't identified any errors, omissions, or consistencies based on our verifications. Now, under the authority of the ordinary part of your AGM, we've issued a report on the statutory accounts and the consolidated accounts. The first of these is available on page 529 of the French version of the Universal Reference Document. We can confirm that we have carried out our audit of the Bouygues company's statutory and consolidated accounts in compliance with the practice in force in France. These are regular. We found that these are regular, sincere, and give a true opinion of the financial situation and results for the period. This report comprises one observation I'd like to draw your attention to concerning the notes to the accounts explaining the first application of NC 20226. That's the first application of. We mentioned in our work conducted on the audit in reference to the financial assets, which are a key part of this audit, concerning the report on the consolidated accounts, which is covered by resolution number 2, page 501 of the Universal Reference Document, again French version. We can confirm that we have conducted our audit based on the accounts as approved by the Board of Directors and in accordance with the accounting practices in France. We can confirm that these consolidated accounts, again drawn up in compliance with IFRS, are true and sincere and give a good reflection of the financial situation and the results of the transactions carried out in 2025. We've identified 3 key points. First of all, the appraisal of goodwill, the accounting of sales, particularly on construction contracts rather, and the provision for litigation and disputes. For each of these risks, we have provided answers to these risks. These key points do not require any particular comment on our part, neither in terms of the methods used or the reasonable nature of the appraisals used or the relevance of the information used in the notes. And I will give the floor to my colleague to tell you about the other reports drawn up for your attention. In our special report on related party agreements, we are drawing your attention to 3 agreements entered into in 2025 with prior approval from your Board of Directors. Firstly, there's a rider to a brand license contract with Bouygues Telecom. This rider extends part of the rights conceded in 2029 and renewed in 2024. This makes the formalism less rigid, or more supple, I should say, in the event of a use of the name Bouygues Telecom, just adding a fee and a 3-year revision mechanism. Secondly, there's an agreement concerning renewal in 2026 of common service agreements with TF1, Bouygues Telecom, and Equans, as well as the renewal of the services agreement with SCDM. All of these under the same terms and conditions as beforehand. The parties concerned and the reasons justifying the importance of each of these agreements for your company have been set forth in detail in our report. Concerning agreements approved during previous financial periods and that continue to be in effect in 2025, we'd like to draw your attention to the brand license agreement with Bouygues Telecom and the EIG 32 Hoche, on the other hand, the common services or shared services agreements with the main subsidiaries of your company, the service agreements agreed with and entered into with SCDM, and the availability of a plane, this is an agreement entered into with Airbuy. You will find that the amounts concerned in each of these agreements are included in our report. We've also been informed of the continuation in effect of the agreement for expenses incurred in defending senior managers in the event of a dispute. No amounts were concerned by this agreement in 2025. Under the authority of the extraordinary part of today's AGM, we have issued 5 reports concerning authorizations or delegations of authority to be granted to your Board of Directors. The 16th resolution aims at giving your Board of Directors the powers enabling it to cancel treasury shares up to the limit of 10% of the share capital. This delegation to be granted for a period of 18 months. We have no observations to make regarding this transaction, which is set forth as provided by the French commercial law. The 17th resolution proposes to delegate to your Board of Directors for a period of 26 months the competence to issue new shares reserved for employees and corporate officers who are members of a company savings scheme up to a maximum of 5% of the share capital. We have no observations to make concerning the details and the issuance of the shares, these new shares. Insofar as the conditions for these capital increases have not yet been determined, we have no opinion concerning preferential subscription rights. If required, we will issue an additional report when and if this delegation of authority is applied. In the 18th resolution, the Board of Directors asks you to attribute free shares to certain employees and or corporate officers up to a limit of 1% of the share capital, including a maximum of 0.15% to corporate officers. The 19th resolution also concerns an authorization to attribute free shares to certain employees and or corporate officers, but for the purposes of retirement. This is fixed at a limit, a maximum of 0.15%, including maximum 0.03 for corporate officers. We have no observations regarding either of these transactions. Finally, the 20th resolution concerns the delegation of authority to be granted to your Board of Directors to issue equity warrants in the event of a public offer on your company. The shares that could be thus issued are limited to 25% of the shares constituting the share capital and a maximum nominal amount of 96 million euro in share capital. We have no observation to make concerning this transaction and will draw up, when and if required, an additional report, as I said, when and if this delegation is used by your Board of Directors. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your trust. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for your reports. We are now going to hear from the Governance Committee, the Committee for Governance, Selection and Compensation, to be presented by Pascaline de Dreuzy. The first part, which is in the form of video, concerns governance. The second part will concern compensation.
Mesdames, Messieurs les actionnaires, je vous présente le rapport du Comité de la gouvernance, de sélection et des rémunérations que je préside. Ce comité est composé également de Benoît Mas, administrateur indépendant, et de Caroline Jégu, administratrice représentant les salariés. Il s'est réuni à 6 reprises au cours de l'année 2025. Dans un premier temps, j'aborderai la partie relative à la gouvernance. Comme chaque année, notre comité a passé en revue la gouvernance de notre société et plus particulièrement la composition du conseil d'administration dont l'évaluation annuelle fait l'objet d'une restitution que vous retrouvez dans le document d'enregistrement universel aux pages 102 et 103. 2 mandats d'administrateurs arrivent à échéance au jour de votre assemblée générale. Ceux de Benoît Mas, administrateur indépendant depuis 2020, et d'Alexandre de Rothschild, administrateur depuis 2017. Compte tenu de leurs compétences, de leur expérience et de leur engagement, le conseil d'administration vous propose de renouveler ces mandats pour une durée de 3 ans, soit jusqu'à l'Assemblée générale appelée à approuver les comptes de l'exercice 2028. Le conseil d'administration a également examiné l'indépendance des administrateurs au regard des critères établis par le code AFEP-MEDEF. Il a revu et confirmé la qualification d'indépendance des 5 administratrices et administrateurs suivants: Nathalie Bellon-Zabot, Félicie Burel, Clara Guémard, Benoît Mas et moi-même, Pascaline de Dreuzy. Si votre Assemblée procède au renouvellement des mandats proposés, votre conseil d'administration restera diversifié, doté des compétences indispensables et composé de 14 administrateurs, 58% de femmes, en intégrant les 2 administratrices représentant les salariés actionnaires, conformément à la directive Women on Board, et 50% d'administrateurs indépendants. L'âge moyen sera de 57 ans et demi, l'ancienneté moyenne sera proche de 10 ans, celle des administrateurs indépendants de 5 ans et 2 mois. La composition des 3 comités du Conseil restera inchangée, comme le montre le tableau présenté à l'écran. Je vous remercie de votre attention. Mesdames, Messieurs les actionnaires, je vous soumets à présent le rapport du comité de la gouvernance, de sélection et des rémunérations pour sa partie rémunération. La rémunération des dirigeants mandataires sociaux pour 2025, rappelée sur cette slide, comporte différentes composantes. Une rémunération fixe, pour le directeur général et les 2 directeurs généraux délégués, une rémunération variable annuelle, plafonnée et soumise à des conditions de performance financière et extra-financière, celle-ci pouvant peser jusqu'à 40% de la rémunération fixe, et une rémunération à long terme, ou LTI, en actions gratuites, dont le nombre est plafonné, et l'acquisition définitive également soumise à des conditions de performance associant des critères financiers, ROCE et TSR, et des critères dits RSE, comportant un critère climat pour 58% et un critère mixité pour 42%, auxquels s'ajoutent différents éléments concernant le régime des frais de santé et de prévoyance, les modalités de retraite supplémentaires, soumises également à des conditions de performance. Vous noterez l'absence d'indemnité de départ et de non-concurrence et l'absence de contrat de travail. Les avantages en nature vous sont détaillés dans le document d'enregistrement universel 2025 en pages 138 à 140. Je commencerai par les rémunérations 2025 ou ex post. Vous sont ici présentés les éléments de rémunération versés en 2025 à Martin Bouygues, président non exécutif du groupe. Une rémunération fixe de président du conseil inchangée à 490 000 €, une rémunération d'administrateur, des avantages en nature et la couverture des frais de santé. Ils sont conformes à la politique de rémunération approuvée l'an dernier. Cette rémunération 2025 est soumise à votre approbation au titre de la 9e résolution de votre Assemblée. La rémunération du directeur général et celle des directeurs généraux délégués au titre de 2025, vote ex post, sont soumises à votre approbation au titre des 10e, 11e et 12e résolutions. La décomposition des principaux éléments de cette rémunération est présentée sur cette slide avec, de gauche à droite, la rémunération fixe, la rémunération variable annuelle, calculée en pourcentage de la rémunération fixe et soumise à des critères de performance, évaluée au titre de l'exercice 2025, conformément à la politique de rémunération approuvée par votre Assemblée générale l'an dernier, vote ex ante. Elle prévoyait l'atteinte de différents objectifs selon une borne basse ouvrant droit à 90% de la rémunération fixe, une borne intermédiaire à 135% de cette rémunération et une borne haute constituant un plafond et donnant droit à 160% de la rémunération fixe. Chacune de ces 3 bornes intègre 3 critères financiers, ROCA, résultat net part du groupe, excédent endettement financier net, un critère stratégie évaluant la réalisation d'objectifs propres à chacun des métiers du groupe, ainsi que des critères extra-financiers, quantitatifs et qualitatifs, représentant au maximum 40% de la rémunération fixe. L'évaluation de ces différents critères conduit à une rémunération variable annuelle qui atteint au titre de l'année 2025 153% de la rémunération fixe pour Olivier Roussat, pour Pascal Granger et pour Édouard Bouygues. Enfin, à l'extrémité droite du tableau, la rémunération variable à long terme en actions ou LTI. Pour chacun d'eux sont précisés, sur la première ligne, le nombre d'actions acquises au titre du LTI 2023-2025, mis en place en 2023 et arrivé à son terme, dont la livraison est prévue au lendemain de la présente Assemblée générale. Votre Conseil, sur recommandation du Comité de la gouvernance, de sélection et des rémunérations, a évalué le niveau d'atteinte des conditions de performance auxquelles l'attribution définitive de ces actions est soumise. Ces conditions intègrent 2 critères financiers et 2 critères RSE, climat et mixité. À l'issue de ce plan, Olivier Roussard, Pascal Granger et Édouard Bouygues acquièrent 95% du nombre maximum des actions définies par rapport à la borne haute. En deuxième ligne, le nombre d'actions attribuées dans le cadre du plan d'action de performance ou LTI 2025-2027 mis en place par le Conseil d'administration en juillet 2025 dans le cadre de la politique de rémunération votée par votre Assemblée. Leur acquisition définitive en 2028, au terme d'une période de 3 ans, est soumise à des conditions de performance financière et RSE. Les autres éléments composant la rémunération ex post du directeur général et de chacun des 2 directeurs généraux sont précisés sur cette slide. Il s'agit d'avantages en nature, de cotisations de prévoyance et de frais de santé, de celles versées au titre des régimes obligatoires de retraite, ainsi que du régime de retraite supplémentaire de type article 82, attribué pour Olivier Roussat en équivalent action. Figure également la rémunération de Pascal Granger au titre de son mandat de président du conseil d'administration de Colas et celle d'Édouard Bouygues au titre de son mandat de président du conseil d'administration de Bouygues Telecom. Concernant les administrateurs, la rémunération attribuée au titre de l'exercice 2025 est conforme à la politique de rémunération que vous avez approuvée lors de la précédente Assemblée générale, soit une enveloppe globale de 1 100 000 €. La répartition de cette enveloppe tient compte de l'assiduité des administrateurs aux réunions du Conseil et des comités, ainsi que de leurs fonctions de membres ou de président de comité, le cas échéant. Ces rémunérations font partie des informations en matière de rémunération des mandataires sociaux qui sont soumises à votre approbation dans leur ensemble au titre de la 8e résolution. Examinons à présent les différents éléments de la politique de rémunération pour l'année 2026 soumis au vote ex ante de votre Assemblée. Pour 2026, il vous est proposé, dans le cadre de la 6e résolution soumise à votre Assemblée, de reconduire à l'identique la politique de rémunération appliquée en 2025 à Martin Bouygues, président du conseil d'administration, à savoir principalement une rémunération fixe inchangée de 490 000 €, une rémunération d'administrateur, aucun élément de rémunération variable. Sont présentées sur cette slide les différentes composantes de la rémunération 2026 du directeur général et des directeurs généraux délégués soumises à l'approbation de votre Assemblée au titre de la 7e résolution. Elles sont similaires à celles que nous venons d'évoquer pour 2025, comme vous pouvez le constater à l'écran sur ce tableau, avec, de gauche à droite, la rémunération fixe annuelle inchangée par rapport à 2025, la rémunération variable annuelle reconduite au même niveau qu'en 2025, soit en pourcentage de la rémunération fixe, une borne basse à 90%, une borne intermédiaire à 135% et un plafond à 160%. Le poids des différents critères de performance financiers et extra-financiers est également inchangé, ces derniers pouvant atteindre au maximum 40%. Ensuite, il vous est de nouveau proposé d'approuver la mise en place d'une rémunération variable à long terme sous forme d'un plan LTI 2026-2028 en action, soumis à des conditions de performance à la fois financières et extra-financières, dont le nombre et les critères figurent dans le tableau à l'écran. Le nombre maximum d'actions attribuées, plafond en borne haute, est inchangé par rapport au plan LTI précédent. Cette année, le conseil d'administration vous propose de mettre en place pour le directeur général un dispositif de rémunération long terme, dit accélération Equans, sous forme d'attribution différée et conditionnelle d'un nombre maximal de 160 000 actions de performance. Ce dispositif, d'une durée de 4 ans, 2026 à 2029, prévoit une attribution annuelle pouvant aller jusqu'à 40 000 actions en fonction de l'atteinte de conditions de performance liées à la croissance du chiffre d'affaires d'Equans. Ces conditions sont fixées chaque début d'année pour la tranche afférente à l'année de référence par le conseil d'administration. L'acquisition définitive des actions interviendra à l'issue du plan lors de l'Assemblée générale annuelle de 2030. Ce dispositif vise à soutenir la stratégie de croissance d'Equans et à renforcer sur la durée l'engagement du directeur général au service de la performance et de la pérennité des résultats du groupe. Il vous est enfin proposé de reconduire sans changement les autres éléments de rémunération d'Olivier Roussat et d'Édouard Bouygues, régime de prévoyance et frais de santé, retraite supplémentaire, avantages en nature. Par ailleurs, Pascal Granger, dans la perspective de son départ à la retraite en 2026, a mis un terme à son mandat de directeur général délégué à effet au 31 décembre 2025. La politique de rémunération applicable aux directeurs généraux délégués autorise le Conseil, si vous l'approuvez, à lever les conditions de performance subordonnant l'acquisition définitive des actions qui lui ont été attribuées au titre des plans LTI 2024-2026 et 2025-2027, compte tenu de son engagement exceptionnel au sein du groupe pendant plus de 40 ans et des actions initiées et mises en œuvre sous sa direction. Quant à la rémunération des administrateurs, au titre de 2026, détaillée sur cette slide, il vous est proposé, dans le cadre de la 5e résolution, soumise à votre Assemblée, de reconduire sans changement la politique de rémunération applicable en 2025. Je vous remercie de votre attention.
Je remercie Pascaline de Drosy pour...
Oh, thank you, Pascaline de Drosy, for this very comprehensive presentation. And now, I'll give the floor back to Olivier Roussat, who will tell you about the outlook for this year. Well, the outlook, again, the businesses of Bouygues are very healthy indeed, robust, and they can certainly show resilience, have done so over the past few challenging years. Our macroeconomic and geopolitical environment remains uncertain, and of course Bouygues will need to remain agile to adapt to future developments. The year 2026, we're looking at stable revenue on a constant exchange rate. We expect COPA to remain historically high after several years of improvement, and of course the expected improvement to Equans' COPA should enable to make up for the loss of TF1's COPA in line with the decline of the advertising market. Thank you. Now, we have received a number of questions by email, and so we provided answers in writing, and so you could look it up on our website, Bouygues.com, and so there's a window just for that. And now we can take your questions in the audience.
Alors, Monsieur.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chairman, I have been an individual shareholder for many years. In the past, you told us about your involvement in the Winkley Point EPR site in Britain. Where do we stand? Has this site been completed? Have operations started? And then Mr. Roussat referred to a data center. I believe that a number of data centers have already been built in France, and apparently there are significant operating issues, especially as concerns heat release for the buildings themselves, but also the piping holding high voltage cables. Now, is this the sort of thing that your group should develop specific know-how for? Now, on Hinkley Point, just 2 words. As far as Bouygues' contribution is concerned, when that business is completed, we are providing the finishing touches, but the site was completed in satisfactory conditions, so much so that our customer trusted us with the building of 2 new EPRs in Britain, and so of course this is a sign of trust. As you know, EPRs are now developing not just in France but elsewhere. And, after having indicted nuclear energy for so many years now, it is getting, as it were, wind in its sails again. And so this is the sort of thing we'll be working on the building of nuclear power plants. Data centers, yes, we've been building quite a few. We're building them in Australia, Germany, Italy, France indeed. And indeed, we've built them in France and the US. We actually were not involved in the US until the Trump administration decided to step this up. We've been getting good feedback from our customers. Now, Stéphane was in charge of data centers until he became the group CFO, and asked him if he had any knowledge of this. Data centers are seen to be huge power consumers. They use a lot of energy, and they will be even more so in the future. There's one being built in France, and we're talking about 1 gigawatt. So it would be an entire power plant, nuclear power plant unit being all eaten up by a data center. But I speak here under the supervision of Jérôme. This business about cables, now, what we're trying to do is to use the dead heat from these data centers to avoid having too much heat released in the air and hurt birds. So see if we could use it for district heating or something, and that heat can also be directed to heat pumps for them to generate useful heat rather than useless heat, as it were. Thank you. Sir? I had a complaint back in previous years. I have a B-box subscription, and I had a prepaid card with unlimited duration. The number ended with 035. I complained with the local shop, and they asked me to send a letter to top management. And here I am. The prepaid card had unlimited duration, and I spent about 100 euros to use it. And back at the time, I used to travel abroad, and so that's why I put in all that money. And then you deleted that offer, but people who paid into this, you couldn't get the money back on the money that had been credited to the card. That's not right. Again, credit for this, and I should get, that should be credited to a new offer if that one has expired. And it's very unfortunate, especially I used to work for Bouygues. Well, sir, look, thank you for this, for being so patient. I mean, clearly, apparently, well, thank you for showing trust in the company. I mean, in spite of this, you have remained loyal to us, and you have here the very head of Bouygues Telecom. So, yes, I'll take your details, sir, and I'll make sure that your issue is dealt with, and we do apologize for the inconvenience. Now then, apart from that, yes, sir. Yes, good afternoon, Chairman. I'm an individual shareholder, and I have a question about artificial intelligence. Do you see any opportunities for the group in artificial intelligence? As the CEO of Iliad says, we have 5 layers. You have power, chips, data centers, models, and then the actual apps. And on each level, I get the feeling that the Bouygues Group could play a role. But my question is, what are the opportunities for the group at large? Well, I'm sure Olivier Roussard, well, look, the data center business, of course, is a significant market, and that is why we have taken up positions in the U.S. that have been redeployed on hyperscalers that have redeployed to the U.S. And, of course, in this contract, you have to be fast. These contracts are worthwhile if you can be fast about it, and that's what François did with one of our companies in the U.S. And on data centers, we have, of course, a significant project in Australia. It hasn't become public yet, but this has confirmed our relationship with our customers, that they have kept their trust in us. These are plants that will sort of host services, but the other contracts are where the clear criterion is how close we can stick to the budget and the timetable. But the next issue is what we do with AI. Now, AI is particularly useful when you can digitalize things. You have 2 companies that have lots of digital content, TF1 and Bouygues Telecom. So when you want to create, special effects for movies or animations, that can be done very efficiently. So this is transformative. But of course, for TF1, it means that everything they've been doing on fact-checking, especially for news programs, especially as regards Ukraine or Iran, it's hard to tell sometimes whether a video is authentic or fake news. And of course, we use AI to help us ascertain the truth of the news. But other than that, of course, there are many other possibilities. We can have settings for networks in a way that enables us to use AI technology. But in any case, that technology can be used in other areas. The amazing improvements, you may remember GPT with the generative AI. Now we have agentic AI, which is a significant development compared to what we had before. And this is certainly going to change the way in which lots of businesses have been working. They used to work on a sort of a functional basis, and this is going to change significantly, and it will be for us to support not just the companies but their employees as well, to make sure that the human dimension is there, but it will be there in a new capacity, and that will, of course, this will have to be very industry specific, because AI in this respect is something of a revolution. And so this is part of the job, but we don't want technology to be imposed upon us. We have to surf on it, on the contrary, so that we can take our people on board and make the most of that technology. Well, thank you very much, Olivier, for that statement on AI. Yes?
Oui, bonjour, Jacques Saubondi from the magazine called Investir. On telecoms, you talked about SFO leaving the market as how will I put it, a clearing up of the market for the greater benefit of consumers, but it's clearly for the greater benefit of the 3 remaining operators. That is the immediate impact. I have another question on that. Okay, let me answer that question, if I may. First of all, look at the situation of telecoms in Europe. And what you'll see is that all the listed telcos have disastrous market caps. But simply, the competitive landscape in Europe is such that the return on capital employed is very weak, if not non-existent, and even negative in some cases. So that is not a sustainable solution. That is not how we can ensure the durability and development of networks in Europe, and France is no exception to the rule. Remember that the prices in France are probably the lowest in the whole world in both mobile and fixed lines. Now, when you reduce the number of operators from 4 to 3, you don't increase the market, you don't reduce it. The market remains the same size. However, you substantially reduce the amount of capex and the amount of operating expenses involved by or incurred by the market operators. The fact that you reduce the number of operators from 4 to 3 probably reduces capex and opex by approximately 2 billion a year. This is what we call synergy. So who will be the beneficiary? Well, the beneficiaries will be consumers. Also the operators, who will finally, hopefully, see some return on the capital employed. May I remind you that Bouygues Telecom, remember, we'll be celebrating our 30th anniversary, but the profitability in the Bouygues Telecom has been very weak, and I'm not proud of that. My other question concerns the international context. In 2025, for 2025, you say it was reasonably peaceful by comparison with previous shocks like COVID and war in Ukraine. I'm not sure we can say the same thing about April 26. That said, where would you position this shock, the war in the Middle East? How would you position it by comparison with previous events? What impact have you identified on Bouygues, and how do you propose to offset those impacts? I'm going to answer this in 2 times. Olivier will give you more detail, but I'm tempted to tell you that in a few days' time, I'll be 74 years of age, so I've been working for quite some time, and I've never known a time of true peace. There's always somewhere something happening such that the world is changing. What has changed a lot is all the noise that the media are making. I think it gives a different scale on things. It puts a different scale and a different perception on how we see the events occurring in the world. Remember, in 2025, there was something terrible happening. It was the war in Ukraine, and it's still ongoing. It's a terrible war. There have probably been millions of fatalities, and that war is still ongoing. In 2026, we have the events in the Middle East. Part of that is perfectly comprehensible. The problem with the proliferation of nuclear weapons is understandable, and other aspects are more complex. We'll see how things pan out. We are informed by very good sources, thanks to TF1. We're constantly. But as for the markets and the impact on the markets, Olivier will tell you more. The current situation, I think the important part is the duration of the conflict. It could well be that this conflict will create the situation we had in early 2022 with the war in Ukraine, with considerably higher level of inflation in all our businesses. As Martin says, in all our business construction, there's energy in cement and steel, and if energy becomes costly mechanically, there will be an impact. Now, our order books are well filled, particularly in construction. We've less backlog in roads, but it's a good backlog all the same. But we can expect inflation, I think. If the war in Iran lasts longer, I think we can expect a recession to set in the world. Even with a good backlog, sooner or later, it will catch up on us. So I think the key issue here is the duration of the conflict. It's the duration that will tell us how diffusive an impact it will have. Remember in 2022, when inflation really rose after the summer of 2022, though the initial invasion was in February. We've modified our clauses, our contracts since 2022. We have revision clauses. We can come back to the table and discuss terms with our inflation is one of these. There's another aspect that we had in 2022 for our employees. It's important to help our employees get through the storm, and if needs be, we will do that again. Another question, gentleman here. Good afternoon, Jean-Claude Lorente. I am an individual shareholder. Yesterday evening, the Bouygues share closed at €51.46. Over 3 years, the extremes are 53.48 and 27.47. They're the extremes. A few years back, you proposed to buy back Bouygues shares at €30. I'm very glad that I kept mine. To conclude, I'd like to come back to something that was said at last year's AGM. A shareholder pointed out that the AGMs of TF1 and LVMH were almost always at the same time. This year, TF1's AGM was last week and LVMH's took place this morning. Is that a coincidence, or did you do something about that comment last year? Thank you. I'll be honest with you, it's coincidental, shall we say. To be honest with you, it's very difficult to organize ourselves. AGMs meet a certain number of criteria, legal obligations on the one hand. There has to be so many days after the board meeting that decides to approve the accounts and to convene an AGM. Then you have to find a location or a venue. There are lots of obligations, lots of restrictions and difficulties involved. Now, I wouldn't like to claim praise for something that we don't deserve. I think it was coincidental. No, Rodolphe has confirmed that was a coincidence. In all events, thank you for being a loyal shareholder. I wasn't trying to shaft you by buying back your shares at €30. On the contrary, I'm delighted to meet shareholders year after year at our annual general meetings, because I don't think there's nothing more encouraging than the loyalty of our shareholders. I'm a shareholder myself, as you know, but shareholders are a community of sorts, and companies need to feel the support of their shareholders. That's something that happens very often at Bouygues, and it's a great source of motivation, a great source of comfort for us all. So thank you for your loyalty. And of course, the share price, well, to be honest, I'm like you. I have no idea what's going to happen. I have no crystal ball. So I can't say what's going to happen with the share price, because every time I say to my children or what I say it turns out not to be. If I may not reassure you, but that's the way it is. Any other questions? Yes, we do. Gentleman here. Louis Much. I'm a registered shareholder. I became a registered shareholder when you were appointed CEO, and I wanted to support a young man with a great future and in a difficult task, taking over from his father. It's easier said than done. Because I was registered, I noticed that you were sending me documents, and at the time, the margin was below 2%, so you can look back to see if I'm wrong, but I'm convinced I'm not mistaken. Because it was below 2%, every year I've been tracking that margin, and in 2024 was 4.5%, in 2025 was up to 4.7%. This is your operating margin, of course. And this year I'm sure you'll reach 5%. So I think you will, with the documents we've received, and particularly what we know about Equans. I think you should emphasize this. If you produce a slide showing that year after year the real creation of wealth, it's thanks to the margin that you have generated. Maybe you'd take that into account. Obviously, my question is about SF4. Patrick Drahi is very smart, because selling his somewhat mature company, as the CEO said, to set up for 20 billion, which is the market cap of Bouygues or even Stellantis. These are huge amounts of money. That means that all the great companies, Colas Rail, Bouygues Construction, and Equans, they will amount to nothing. So Drahi is very, very smart. So I suppose my question is, do you plan to call a capital increase to pay for this nugget? First of all, thanks for your loyalty. Thanks to you too, because you are talking about something that goes back to 1989 when I became chairman of this group. 1989, that's a long time ago. So, like you, we are very happy to see that the margin has increased. It's also important to bear in mind that the profile of the group has changed. In 1989, we were very much a construction group. Construction and public works are not very capital-intensive businesses, and with low margins, there's a considerable amount of risk. But at the moment, our businesses are much more capital-intensive, and I've mentioned the problem of Bouygues Telecom, but if you look at the other businesses like Colas, Colas is a very capital-intensive business, much more so than Bouygues Construction. And the proof of this is that Bouygues has 15 billion in equity. Back in 89, we were far from that, well below that figure. So the group's profile has also changed. I believe that we've progressed. I also believe that we have people of great quality in every part of the group. Equans, for instance, the integration of Equans has progressed marvelously. There's a few things left to do, but we've improved remarkably. We now have a whole reservoir of highly talented people in the group, which I believe enables us to regenerate the group generation after generation, but it also gives us a certain amount of stability and quality in the way we manage the group. Unfortunately, we are never safe from unforeseeable accidents, but as for the rest of your question, Olivier, did you want to add anything? Oh, capital increase. Oh, yes, you asked about a capital increase. Well, for the moment, we haven't any plans to increase the capital. Concerning the valuation of SFR, I wouldn't like you to think that Drahi is going to get a check for 20 billion euro and head off on holidays. The group has debts. The group has debt, so after paying the debt, there won't be a lot left out of the 20 billion. It'll be a substantially smaller figure after debt. Now, your assessment of Bouygues' valuation, if SFO is worth 20 billion, Bouygues is worth 20 billion, and we have 98% of Bouygues Telecom, half of TF1, which is a very, very good company, Equans, which is a magnificent company, Colas, another magnificent company, Bouygues Immobilier, which is important know-how, Bouygues Construction, all going very, very well. The level of debt at Bouygues has become very reasonable once again. In the space of 5 years, we have invested considerable amounts. La Poste Telecom, Equans, and more investment in Colas, totaling a little over 8 billion euro, I think. And despite that, we have reduced our net debt considerably. So the group has real qualities. I think what we have to do is continue to improve our COPA, to continue to improve our COPA margin, which means improving our net profit and our ability to distribute dividends. Let me conclude by saying one thing. The net income of Bouygues Telecom is far from ridiculous. It's very significant. The only problem is that it can't be distributed. Why? Because we have to fund considerable amounts of capex. Bouygues Telecom, we've invested 1.5 billion, 1.5 billion a year in capex, which is a substantial amount. But if you're not profitable enough, you can't fund this amount of capex. But Bouygues Telecom is a fully fledged part of the Bouygues group. And that's the important thing for shareholders to understand. Bouygues is now comprised of a set of businesses that have very different features and characteristics. You have businesses like Bouygues Construction or Equans or Bouygues Immobilier that all have the ability to distribute a substantial share of their net income because they're not very capital intensive. Unlike Bouygues Telecom. So Bouygues Telecom contributes to the profits of Bouygues, but if there were only Bouygues Telecom, the truth is that we would be hard put to pay a dividend. I'm not even sure we'd be able to. So that's the problem, the ability to distribute income. This is why I'm saying that the reorganization of the telco market in France and even in the rest of Europe, it's a real problem because it's an issue. In telecommunications in Europe, and you can check it, it's very easy to check what I'm saying. The market caps of the telecommunications operator in Europe are very poor because of that. There's too much competition, which has destroyed value and destroyed margins. It'll only work for so long because after a while there'll be no players left in the market if the market is too capital intensive. So I think what's apparently happening in France, will hopefully happen in France, I think we've already seen something similar in Spain. Italy is in a similar situation. I think throughout Europe the situation is very similar. I think this may be a trend. Reduction of the number of players in the market. Sir. And under me, I'm a loyal shareholder for the last 25 years. If you just give me a clarification concerning Equans, by comparison with what you expected in terms of profitability 5 years ago, it took you 2 years to achieve the profitability you wanted, but over the long term, what about sales? SFO, you're talking about buying 40% of the business. Are you buying part of the retail clients? Some of my friends were unable to attend. You know where they are this afternoon. Well, they're at Dior. Would it not be possible to have your AGM on a Wednesday? There'll be no competition for her. If he prefers Dior to Bouygues, then, well, each to his own tastes. To answer your question on Equans, the indicators we gave at the Capital Market Day, I forget it was January or February, it was February 2023. We will finally reach the 5% target, COPA target, a year ahead of schedule because that has become our guidance for this year. Cash generation, as I've said, we're at the top end of the bracket, which would suggest that we're doing better than we expected. And finally, concerning sales, we said from the very start of 2023 that there were activities that we felt were less profitable and we plan to discontinue. We did that with placing communities in the UK. There were construction areas we felt that wasn't profitable enough, and then there are a number of businesses that we disposed of because they weren't aligned with Equans' core business. Because of we had heat networks that were capital intensive that we didn't want to retain. Then we had automotive charging facilities that we didn't want to keep because they involved a lot of capex, and the profile that we want for Equans is such that we want the COPA to become cash. We want to convert it to cash very rapidly. We want Equans to have low capex, generate dividends that will be channeled back to the parent company, as Martin said. And then the acquisition we're making, we are making what we call bolt-on acquisitions, small acquisitions, because these are areas in which the densification in the areas we work on, accelerate growth. We become power prices, which give us a better margin. To answer your question on SFO, we're buying, if I remember correctly, 42% of SFO's sales. Within that 42%, you will find the B2B, but also the B2C, the what we call the retail business. Without that, you would not arrive at this level of sales. So this is the breakdown that we have arrived at with the other telecom operators. Now, there are a lot of things to be still remain to be defined, particularly in terms of the feasibility. There's an 18-month period during which the various antitrust authorities will examine the situation, and of course the telecommunications regulator. They will all have a say. So there's a long way to go just yet. Gentleman here.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you, sir. I myself, I'm also an individual shareholder, and I have a question for Bouygues Telecom. Not just for Bouygues Telecom. In fact, what I really would like to know is what do you propose to do in terms of cybersecurity on mobile phones? Because what it is that you get unwanted calls on our phones. We'd like to be protected. Is there anything being planned about this? Well, look, I'll give I can ask my son, but there's an app called Ça raccroche. It hangs up. What it is that they deal with the constant flow of unwanted phone calls, and they stop calling you. Yeah, well, there are apps, and that particular one is a community app. In other words, it's a non-profit thing. And what it does is that it aggregates millions of numbers being used for solicitations and sort of aggressive selling, sometimes illegal. And that's a really useful app, because on iPhones in particular, you get these calls, whereas on Android phones, there's an internal mechanism to prevent this. But there's not just that. You have actual numbers. You have phone identity theft. You think it's somebody calling you. You recognize the name or the phone number. And then when you pick up, it's not that person talking to you. That is a phenomenon that started emerging 2 or 3 years ago. The way it works is that these criminal operators, they use false foreign telco operators telling you, well, this number is calling your customer, and so let the call through. Now, if it's one of our numbers, we know that the phone is located in France or not. But if it's a number belonging to one of our competitors, Orange or Free, there's nothing we can do. So we were about to create a database to make sure, to ascertain whether the number is indeed present on the territory or not, to prevent that kind of fraud. But it is a constant cat and mouse game, and you're right. This is something we are up against, and we're working hard to address this. All right, well, if there are no further questions, we move on to... yes, please go ahead. Sorry, I didn't see you. Yes, I was concealed in the back. I'm also an individual shareholder, and I'd like to say I really like your videos. They're beautiful, and you have fine values on display, and there are not enough women in the AGM. I'd like to see more women among the shareholders. In any case, I have a question, and I have the same question for TF1. Well, I asked a question, I got a negative answer, but are you developing your own AI within the group? The reason I ask is that you have lots of AIs around, and there's no reason why the Bouygues Group should not have its own AI. Talking about recent developments in the Middle East, there are issues of energy supply and other, for instance, for those contracts in various parts of the region, have you suffered any attacks, any bombing? And then finally, you're talking about a new media landscape, things that are moving fast now. But of course, your perception can vary from one year to the next, because artificial intelligence is making significant inroads and might change the way in which content is generated. Well, look, on the first question again about AI, there are many solutions being developed in-house. When we find something off the shelf, we might as well use that. But if we cannot find what we need, we develop our own AI tools to address our own specific, industry-specific issues. But again, we lean on major existing models. We don't have to develop own in-house large language models, because here you're talking about huge expenditure. We wouldn't do that. On the Middle East, well, yes, there were about 1,000 people out in areas between the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. We don't have many people in Qatar, but we have a small number in the rest of the region. In any case, we repatriated those families that wished to return, but it turns out many people prefer to stay there. They didn't wish to be taken back from. So a few people did want to return. On the sites where we're involved, we haven't had any issues, but in Dubai, there is missiles that hit the tower just across the street from where we are located, and that's precisely why we felt it might be unsafe to stay there. But as to the consequences, there will be consequences because, well, fortunately, there are various purchasing portals in various parts in China, Panama, Turkey, etc. So sourcing is diversified nonetheless. The unit components we're using will be affected by the developments in the region. All right, well, thank you. And I think by now, the time, we've run out of questions, so we'll check on the attendance sheet based on the central processing office and to address those verifications that were warranted by the Bureau, and I think we've done just that. And so if there are no objections, let's use our electronic voting system. You use a manual device. You were given a chance to vote ahead of the AGM, and Didier Casas, who's here, will give you some explanations about the vote, and then we'll be able to vote on the resolutions themselves. Didier, take it away. Yes, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. A few details on the way in which the voting box operates. It's very simple. You press 1, this means you're voting in favor. If you 2, you vote against. If you press 3, it's an abstention. You have 10 seconds to vote, and you can change your vote. You have 10 seconds to do that, and then, of course, the final vote, if you change your mind, will prevail. So the quorum altogether has been reached, and you have the actual numbers on the screen. So the number of voting shares, the quorum, and please stay in the auditorium until the very completion of the vote. All right, we start with the vote on resolution number 1. You are to approve the annual the parent company financial statements for the year ended 2025. Please vote now.
Le vote est clos.
Voting is closed and the resolution was adopted. Resolution number 2, this is about the consolidated financial statements where you can see the profit attributable to the group listed somewhere. Please vote.
Le vote est clos.
Voting is closed and the resolution was adopted. And now we move on to resolution number 3 to have a dividend set at 2.1 euros per share, and the balance of the net profit will be carried over. Please vote now.
Le vote est clos.
Voting is completed and the resolution was adopted. Number 4, related party agreements. You're asked to vote on conventions of services between Bouygues and its subsidiaries, between Bouygues and SCDM, and the rider to the brand license signed with Bouygues Telecom.
Le vote est clos.
No more voting, and you can see that the resolution was carried. Number 5, this is the approval of the remuneration policy for directed, and so you can find the details of that in item 2.4.1, compensation in the universal registration document.
Le vote est clos. Et la résolution est adoptée. 6e résolution.
And approved. 6th resolution, approval of the compensation policy for the chairman of the board of directors. Voting is underway.
Et le vote est clos.
Voting is over. And the resolution is approved. 7th resolution concerns approval of the compensation policy for the Chief Executive Officer and Deputy Chief Executive Officers. Voting is underway. Voting is over. And the resolution is approved. 8th resolution asks you to. This concerns the ex post pay. This is approval of the information about the compensation of corporate officers mentioned in paragraph 1 of the Commercial Code of Article L 2210(9). Voting is now underway. Voting is over. And the resolution is approved. 9th resolution, approval of the components of the total compensation and benefits of all kinds paid during or awarded in respect of 2005 to Martin Bouygues, Chairman of the Board of Directors. Please vote now. Voting is over. And the resolution has been approved. 10th resolution, approval of the compensation for 2025 paid to Olivier Roussat, Chief Executive Officer. Voting is underway. Voting is over. And the resolution has been approved. The 11th resolution concerns approval of the compensation of Pascal Granger, Deputy Chief Executive Officer for 2025. Voting is underway. Voting is now over. And the resolution is approved. 12th resolution concerns approval of the compensation for 2025 of Edouard Bouygues, Deputy Chief Executive Officer. Please vote now. Voting is over. The resolution has been approved. The 13th resolution concerns the proposed renewal of the term of office of 2 directors for a period of 3 years until the AGM approving the accounts in 3 years' time. This 13th resolution concerns renewal of the term of office of Benoit Mas. Please vote now. Voting is over. And the resolution has been approved. The 14th resolution concerns the renewal of the term of office of Alexandre de Rothschild as a director. Please vote now. Voting is over. And the resolution has been approved. The 15th resolution, as is the case every year, we ask you to renew your authorization to the Board of Directors to trade in the company's shares for a period of 18 months. This is as part of a share buyback plan. Voting underway. Voting is over. And the resolution has been approved. We're now moving on to the extraordinary general meeting, beginning with the 16th resolution concerning authorization to the Board of Directors for a period of 18 months, authorization to reduce the share capital by cancellation of shares held by the company. Please vote now. Voting is over. And the resolution has been approved. The 17th resolution concerns delegation of competence to the Board of Directors for a period of 26 months with a view to increasing the share capital without preemptive rights for existing shareholders and for the benefit of employees or corporate officers of the company or related companies who are members of a company savings scheme. Voting is underway. Voting is over. And the resolution has been carried. 18th resolution, authorization to the Board of Directors for a period of 26 months to allot existing or new shares free of charge, entailing the waiver by shareholders of their preemptive rights in favor of employees or corporate officers of the company or related companies. Please vote now. Voting is over. And the resolution has been approved. The 19th resolution concerns authorization to the Board of Directors for a period of 26 months to allot existing or new shares free of charge as a retirement benefit, entailing the waiver by shareholders of their preemptive rights in favor of eligible employees or corporate officers of the company or related companies. Please vote now. Voting is over. And the resolution has been approved. The 20th resolution Delegation of competence to the Board of Directors for a period of 18 months to issue equity warrants during the period of a public offer for the company shares up to a limit of 25% of the share capital. Please vote now. Voting is over. And the resolution has been approved. 21st and final resolution asks you to grant powers to accomplish formalities concerning the AGM. Voting underway. Voting is over. Voting is over and the resolution has been approved. Thank you, dear shareholders. Thank you, Didier. I'd like to thank the members of the board. And in fact, I'd like to thank you all for your loyalty, as we said earlier on. We have a lot of very loyal shareholders, and I'd like to thank them. I think the AGM is now over, so I wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you. Bye.